Hello, everybody. How's it going? I'm looking to see who we got in the chat. Hey, Scott. How are you? I sent you a link if you want to come on. No worries if you don't. No big deal. I'm Miss Linda. Glad you're here. Allegra, of course, and Lori. Hey, guys. So I am really, really excited about this one. Um, as you guys know, I do some research for some other channels on YouTube, as does our guest. Hey, Rion, how are you? Catherine, how are you? And we get a lot of questions about where we get information from. And I thought we would start with, then that got into Ancestry more. So I thought we would start there. So Sandra is joining us. She's one of our nomies. Hey, Joe Tracy. So we're going to talk about it from more than one angle. We're going to talk about what's a good idea, what's good reasons to research ancestry, but there's some things that you're going to want to look out for before you go into it. We're going to talk about some stories. Sandra does this a lot more than I do. So I'm going to say she's the expert as far as that goes competitively. I am going to put a link. She is doing some genealogy stuff of her own. You may very well hear one of my dogs wander in. You guys know how that is. Hey, Terry. Thank you. Nurse M, you're here as well. So I guess the best way to open up is what is the genealogy? Because I think a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about it. And it's simply tracing your family history. Modern day, though, with science has opened it up to more options, which is, trace your family history through genetics, and that can get complicated. So we'll give her. Hey, May the Fae. Hey, KP. Good to see you as well. Not that Karen. Always. Hope I don't miss anybody. Give us a little bit of time if you ask a question. We will get to them as quick as we can. But I want to let Sandra introduce herself and talk about what she does and how she got into doing this. Because she's actually starting to turn it. She's talking about doing her own YouTube channel, which I'm really excited about too at some point.
Yeah.
So, Sandra, I'll give you a second to introduce yourself.
All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Sandra Ramirez. I started researching about, 28 years ago. Just got interested. I grew up an Army brat, and we never lived very close to our extended family. And so I just decided to start researching. And so from there, I've just accumulated a lot of time and research and, um, yeah, so doing the genealogy ended up being a full-time passion for me on the side while I was also a 911 dispatcher for many years. And then it evolved into me doing research for others. And I found a couple of friends, biological parents who were adopted. I've done genealogies for several other friends. And as time has evolved, I'm just now contemplating turning it into a bigger business. So,
Cool. And of course, with your daughter, you said in college, it makes it a lot easier.
right,
Um,
right.
Hang on. Okay, I was making an adjustment really quick because I was getting a issue. You had some feedback, but I turned your mic down just a little bit, so that I think that helped it.
Okay.
And for my aspect, hey May the Fae, glad to see you. Hey Chrissy Lee, I am so thrilled that you are here.
Hey,
Um,
Chrissy.
we need to send warm vibes to her. And T Rocks as well has been facing some challenges lately. So let's give some no me love. Sorry to steal your thunder there, Scott. It's not stealing your thunder, it's spreading the thunder around. Um,
Exactly.
thank you guys for doing that. So the way that I kind of accidentally stumbled into it is a little bit different than her story. So I am adopted, and I've always known that I'm adopted. But when I was 18 years old, my biological mother, who had tracked me down, basically decided to make an appearance. But when I met my biological father, he said, "Okay, I remember her, but not really that detailed, et cetera, et cetera." So I did a 23andMe thing, which actually showed that I am actually related to a lot of his relatives as well. So it kind of dispelled the whole thought. And I know a lot of people, hey, KP, all the good vibes, and Chrissy Lee. Yep, NT rocks. I agree. Both of those. So with me, the challenge then came, what do I do with the information? At the same time, my son, a few years later, got older and said, where's our family from? And I'm like, oh, I got nothing. I don't know. And you go to a doctor and they ask you your history and you're like, I don't know. So that's kind of where I got into it. And then, of course, gotten into it when I'm researching other things. So, Sandra, I'm going to kind of let you talk about what you do. If I were to come to you and say, hey, Sandra, I want to research genealogy, what would be your first step?
I would first tell people, interview your own family members. You would be surprised what they know and how much they know. And you can take little bits from each little family or each family member and start creating a tree and going from there. And the other thing, look at photo albums. There are so many family members in your photo albums that you're not aware of, or you'll see a name and you don't realize that you're related to them.
Well, and
So
now
those are,
too, with video, you can sit down and video somebody,
yeah.
and make that. My grandmother is now 104. So my father, who's in his late 80s, has been videoing her a lot, and her memory is still very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
I will say too, if you do decide to go down this road, be prepared for a couple of things. One, be prepared for relationships to not be what you thought they were. And what I mean by that is, my husband grew up in East Tennessee, has another family by the same last name that they thought weren't relatives of theirs because they were
Mm-hmm.
told they weren't relatives of theirs. And they thought their grandfather was an only child. Well, turns out not only was he not an only child, he had three brothers. And as I was going through the genealogy and pulling newspapers, I realized at some point they had a falling out. And it's either after one brother got sick or after they had a business dealing that didn't look like it went well. Also found out that his father had a sibling that had passed in infancy, didn't know anything about that. Because now we talk about a lot of things that sometimes I think we shouldn't. But back then, when it came to a death of an infant or it came to um, adoption or that kind of thing, they tended to not want to talk. A lot of you get past 1970-ish adoptions going back, those in a lot of states are still sealed. Now
Mm-hmm.
they're more open than they used to be. The other thing is sometimes you find out things that you wish you hadn't. So when you get into it, you may find out that, you know, I've had friends who have done it and found out their father's not their father or their mother's not their mother. Because I was lucky I grew up knowing I was adopted, but not everybody does. And as you go back through past in time too, you have to realize, and for lack of another way to say it, is there some children that actually belong to the milkman, meaning that there are people that you think are your child or think are a relative of yours that may actually end up not being. And that's something to
Yeah.
kind of watch for. Yeah, KP said, yeah, there's a lot that wasn't talked about. And it was, good and bad, right? Sometimes I think we talk about a little too much now,
Mm-hmm.
but at least it's more open for other people. So we're going to go through. So if I said to you, I want to do this very inexpensively, I've looked through my pictures, or I'm adopted, I just found out I was adopted, where would you send me to go first?
Well, if you were adopted, um, I would definitely have somebody take an ancestry DNA test. I believe that is the main website to be able to find family members, and most people use that for DNA purposes. So you're more likely to be successful in that aspect.
Well, and
Also,
there's two major ones, right? Ancestry.com,
mm-hmm,
23andme.com. I know there's a third one, but I don't know a lot about the third one. But those are pretty much the most popular too.
right.
So I'm going to show my screen, and I am not going to show the main screen, guys, because the main screen has relatives' names on it that I don't even know, let alone consented to be on here. I will tell you too if it's something that you want to look at for Ancestry.com, 23andMe. I've got some links in below for some discounts. They're not sponsored video in any shape, form, or fashion. I'm just kind of wanted to share them. So hang on just a second. Let me pull this up. Okay. So as you guys can see from what you're looking at here, this is basically what it looks like when you get an ancestry report from 23andMe. So some options on this are to see who I'm related to. And the way that that works is if they put DNA in, they have to consent to having their name unveiled. So if anybody puts it in and they're related to me, I have to consent to let my name be known as well. So the thought that you can go on and just see anybody is not true. You have to consent in. Not that Karen said my heritage is the third one. Thank you, Anna. It just left my brain. My heritage is a third. Not that Karen. I'd love to do genealogy, but I'm stuck now with Europe and other countries, and we're going to talk about that in just a second too. So if you look on the main page, and especially if you know your biological parents or you don't, there are some advantages to looking at this from just a overall health perspective. If I were to click on the main homepage, though, again, it would show relatives that I don't want to show you just again for that reason. But if you look, I share DNA with 5,000 people that are in the database with 23andMe, which is just an astronomical amount of people. You can sort it though based on close relatives, new, and every time somebody new signs up that opts in to let me know, sends that. Linda B said, testing connected my cousin and I knew about her, but not how to find her. It was cool to connect with her a bit. She is doing a lot of research on our family tree. Yeah, you can tell where they're from, again, if they insist to it. It also tells you, which I find really interesting, is your Neanderthal history, which is, another species of human, for lack of another way to put it. And I don't mind showing you this part because I don't think it shows any names. So it'll show you what percentage you are that tends to be the same traits. And they've really improved this analysis over a while. So it says I have 21% more Neanderthal DNA than 21% of other customers. So it tells you some aspects that, if that's the case, that are kind of tend to be true for you. Yes, it does say Neanderthal there, Sri Vicky. May the Fae, many new member. Thank you. I was going to announce that in a few minutes. I just started memberships, guys, and I'm very, very excited about it. Allegra, I'm stuck on which kit to start with asking for Christmas gift. I'm the only one technically in my bio family. Keep wavering between the two main sites. We're going to talk about that in a second about which one you want to choose because there's some differences and it depends on what you want to find out. So if I wanted to find out just basic medical history and kind of have a way to go from there, 23andMe is the way that I would go.
Exactly.
And the reason for that is because of the type of information you get. So interestingly, if you look, it says I have 2% more than most of the people in the system. And it says, some of the traits I might have would be having a worse sense of direction. I have the worst sense of direction on the planet. It's terrible. And unfortunately, so does my son. And again, you don't want to marry these results too much. Okay. So if you see, it says I am more likely to, it's not that you automatically will. So these are insights into your health. But it's not a crystal ball, right? So environment, lifestyle, there's some other things. Linda B, we must be related, quite possibly. There's more to it. So what I don't want you to do is say, okay, I am, and you'll see this in a minute, because I'm going to share it, my tendency to, or risk of having certain diseases. You don't want to zero in and say, oh God, this says I'm going to have it, so I'm going to have it. Okay. That's not where it's just that based on.
It's a guideline.
It's a guideline.
For something for you to be aware of and to also talk to your doctor about.
Yeah. And see, that's another with when you go into a doctor's office and you don't know a lot about your history, or you know one side, not the other, it can be kind of complicated. So this can give you kind of a little bit of insight. Um, it says less likely to sneeze with a full stomach, which I think is hilarious to me. Um, Having difficulty discarding rarely used possessions. So that is something that I, according to my DNA profile, would have zero problem with. And honestly, I think that tracks too. I'm not really big on stuff and don't really care about. I've got a few things. My grandmother's clock is sitting back there, but I'm not one that was arguing over everything that she had. Um, don't generally get angry when I'm hungry. So little things like that. But this one says I have zero variants associated with being less likely to have fear of heights. So this is kind of fun when it comes to the Neanderthal DNA. And basically that means we're all part, not completely what people would say as human. So you can also, again, when I talked about it depends on what you want to do. So if you're searching for health information, 23andMe is the one I would want to go to. If you're searching for geological locations, it would not be the one that I would go to. And the reason it because it relies very heavily on where that relative is now. No itchy mosquito bites Allegra, probably. That's probably in there somewhere. Because I'm in the South and they love
Me
me.
too.
So yeah. Another thing is I probably wouldn't some of these traits allow somebody really young to see without supervision. And the reason that I say that is, again, sometimes power of suggestion can be very, very strong. And you can end up thinking you feel something that you don't necessarily feel. But we can go into the health and overview. And again, I don't have the whole experience unlocked, but it shows me, some information on how I'm likely to sleep. It gives me my genetic heart. So if you look, I have an increased likelihood of coronary artery disease. That's something that I wouldn't know necessarily, again, being adopted. It says that type 2 diabetes, less likely to have some other stuff like familial hypercholesteremia. Somebody else that's in the medical profession probably can say that more. And it shows me, it also gives you some potential directions to take a look at. It's very simple stuff like create a habit of 30 minutes of exercise a day. So you can see if you are wanting to basically create a roadmap for you for the future based on the past, then this might be one you want to go through. Trying to find what I meant by. Okay. So this is why I said you want to be really, really careful with not mirroring this information. Therese is a new member. Morgan Silver is a new member. Thank you guys. I am really, really honored for you guys being there. Allegra, I must be lost Neanderthal, immune to and all poison plants. It comes in handy being outside 90% of the time. Yeah. And if there's a poison plant within 5 feet of me, I'm probably going to have the problem with it. So this is why I said don't marry this information and be kind of really careful with the way you look at it. So if you notice on mine, it says late onset Alzheimer's disease. That's something I think a lot of us are afraid of, especially in the United States. But I've got a slightly increased risk. I'll click into that. So it tells me that I have one variant out of the 4 that would indicate a late onset. When it indicates that, it also is very clear that it has limits. It also kind of explains what it means. But if the wrong person looks at this, it could be, okay, I forgot what I had for dinner last night. That's going to give me some stress. Oh, Nurse M, thank you. High cholesterol in the blood. That's the name that I butchered a little while ago. So that's why I would use this one. And there were some prizes when I found it as well. I wish I could show you, and I can't. Let me see. No, not without showing stuff we don't want to. Research overview. It asks you questions as well, and that's kind of what it builds the non-genetic likelihood information on. Well, you know as well as I do that how we see ourselves can vary. So if I'm going through and I'm answering these questions, are you allergic to pollen? That depends if I know what pollen is, and that depends if I think I'm allergic to pollen, but what I'm really allergic to is dandelions, because dandelions come out at the same time as pollen. So you really have to kind of have a healthy dose of skepticism when it comes to these. But it does help from the standpoint of trying to figure out who you are from a genetic standpoint. But remember that they only look at a limited amount of genes. So there's a whole lot more, but it can help. You can opt into for if there's new technology that's uncovered or new information that's covered. Then, hey Gina D, thank you for becoming a new member. I appreciate you. So you can also opt in to get updated information. One of the things a lot of people are worried about is, well, if a crime's committed, then that can lead law enforcement to me. Sandra, I'm going to let you, because you verbalized it better than I did, about the concern and how to address that.
Right. There is only one website that law enforcement typically uses, and that's gedmatch.com. And anybody who actually uploads their DNA to this website has to opt in order to allow law enforcement to actually use it. So it's very much a user-friendly, user-acknowledged website for law enforcement. The other websites, Ancestry, DNA, also 23andMe, only would allow a law enforcement upload on a case-by-case basis with a subpoena under extraordinary circumstances. So there's really not a deep concern for the average user that their DNA is being used to track down a killer or something of that nature.
Yeah. Now, it's not impossible, and I want to stress that it's not impossible, because it's not, but the likelihood of it. And I'm gonna suggest this too. And I'm gonna suggest it really lightly so YouTube doesn't end up taking us down before we even get started. The likelihood, a lot of people believe in a lot of conspiracy theories, and I'm one of those people that think that sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. Right? But that being said, if certain entities wanted to be able to catalog everybody's genetics, they could do it the second they were born. So it's one of those things that it's probably your information's out there. I know I used to sell life insurance, and there's actually a health database that your information's in. It's kind of like your credit report. Linda BDB, I am going to recognize her. She gifted 10 memberships. I'm going to cry, Linda. Thank you so much. So, yeah. So my birth mother's actually in the chat listening, and she said that I could share the percentage of how much she's my mother, which I can't do without showing anybody else. But I can tell you, for example, my son is 49% me and 51% his dad. So it's not the 50-50 that you think about sometimes. Marion, hi, thank you. So that's where we're going to stop with this one. Does anybody have any questions in particular about how 23andMe work? And again, I'm not trying to dox I'll dox myself. I don't care. I'm pretty easy to find because I'm all over the place. The other thing that you can see if I were to hit the home button is where ancestors lived. So I joke with my son because it says that we go back to Marie Antoinette, and he was saying, well, that means we go back to royalty. And I said, except for we're also related to the Hatfields and McCoys. So if you're not from the States, the Hatfields and McCoys, if you think of the person from the South they want to interview after a tornado, to make you think that we don't wear shoes and that we all have a family of cows, that's the Hatfields and McCoys. So they're a family that got into it with each other. So when you think of, Hillbilly USA, in fact, if you go to Gatlinburg, there is a show that's the Hatfields and McCoys. That's kind of amusing. So one's royalty and one is not. So you have a question, Sandra. Did you also use 23andMe or any other DNA kit service? Anna is
Um,
asking.
the short answer is absolutely. I have my DNA across several different platforms, and the reason being is one may be my mother's side of the family has more family members on that particular platform than the other. And a lot of these websites, you can actually take one test on Ancestry and then pay a more nominal fee and upload it on places like deadmatch.com, which is actually free, excuse me, or 23andMe, Family Tree DNA.
Yeah.
So you're only taking one test, but you can upload it to across multiple platforms. But the short answer is I have my DNA on pretty much every DNA website you possibly could imagine.
Well, and you can also, if you have the email, so like let's say that I wanted to know, and I'm not going to do this live, but let's say that I want to know if Sandra and I are related. So
Hmm.
if Sandra shares with me her email that she used for 23andMe in particular, then I can put it in and it can help us find each other. But Sandra has to opt into that first. So even
Right.
if I put it in and she said no, then it would say no. There's some
Hmm.
people too that choose for their medical history, location to be shown. You get to decide what somebody else can see about you. Let's
Correct.
see. Um, so it's
And
really.
I'll go out on a limb and say, because of my husband's line of work and previously being law enforcement
Hmm.
tangential, my trees on Ancestry are set to private, and anybody can send you a message and
Right.
inquire about your tree, but then it allows the user to be a little more select about who they're sharing information with.
So Allegra, sorry, I'm an echo here. Said this is so helpful. As criteria allows you to see. Okay, so her question is, so 23andMe has this criteria versus others that don't allow for you to decide what others see about you. The only one I'm not familiar with, that third one, and you might be able to answer for that, Sandra. But yes, even on Ancestry, it lets you decide how much that you want to put out there.
Exactly.
Yeah, and what information you want to show.
Right. And
Um,
and that's a great point. Everything on Ancestry for my DNA is set to private. So it shows that I'm a match, and I only have a limited amount of information that's shareable, my first name and last letter. And
yeah.
they can't access my tree. They would have to contact me to see how we may be related.
And again, the DNA is not how you find just the blueprint of your family, right? It's how you find the genetic blueprint. So as
Correct.
far as who's legally related to who, and I use the word legally on purpose, you don't need to do that to find out this. Even if you didn't want to go through any online sources, you can go to county records, you can go to birth records. These type of services though make the search be very, very shortened. Even if you've got somebody in your family who's really into ancestry, they may not have everything right. And I'm going to give you an example. My cousin and I are in another cousin's quote unquote ancestry of the Newman family. Well, by both of us and our children, it says fathers unknown. Well, all you had to do was pick up the phone. There is no fathers unknown there. So everyone who sees that is going to think that for me and April, we don't know who the father of our children were when there's marriages and all of that stuff. So that's not true. So there's an echo a little bit. Okay. Um, Thank you, Allegra. Allegra's keeping me updated on how we're sounding just because we can't necessarily hear it. You guys are about 6 seconds in our future. I would love to do 23andMe just to find out DNA ancestry. Yeah, a lot of people do it just for the health information. But
Hmm.
again, don't marry it. It's kind of one of those things that's a contributing factor into what you decide to do, but not all of it. Not that Karen, let me know if that's okay to read out loud because I don't want to. I'm going to mark it without, if you tell me she was given some information. Yeah, you can also do DNA testing at your doctor's office, although it's not going to give you ancestry. So any more questions about this particular one, and then we'll kind of move into some other things. Make sure. Okay. If you do, just let me know. I'm going to stop sharing this for a second. And I'm going to see if I can't pull up the locations without showing everything here in a minute. Okay. Not that, Karen, if you want me to read that out loud, just let me know, and I will. Allegra, okay, cool. Thank you. That was a question. Major deciding factor. Yeah. Yeah. Privacy is a big concern. And again, I want to stress, hear me say that nothing is secure, right? How many times do we hear of a website getting hacked or information accidentally getting somewhere? That can happen. But I wanted everyone to know both sides of it. All right, Sandra, you had some stuff you wanted to share. You want to see if you can share your screen?
Oh, about what? I'm sorry.
About the Ancestry. I'm going to pull up the Ancestry portion of it if you want to talk about why you would use Ancestry.com over 23andMe.
Okay. Let me see if I can try to get this computer. We had issues earlier, and this is my slower laptop.
That's okay. Yeah, we had some volume issues earlier. So
it doesn't appear like it's going to let me.
That's okay. Hang on. I'm going to show this one. Okay. So part of the reason that I might use Ancestry instead of 23andMe is because it gives me a little bit different information. So I'm going to show, I'm going to share it again. And I'm going to try really careful what I actually put in, what I actually show. Okay. No, you can't see names here. So if I am wanting to look up historical information and facts, so if I want to know if my great-great-grandfather served in the military, for example, if I want to know information from censuses, that's where I would go to Ancestry.com instead.
Exactly.
And the reason is, as you can see, it will, whoops, I'm on the wrong screen. Sorry. It gives you more information. You can explore by, it's less genetics, although they do have a genetic component. But if I want to look at birth and marriage records, for example, if you like to dig into your background more, Ancestry is going to be the way to go. I will say that it's not as easy as the 23andMe to me. I don't think it's as user friendly, but that's just my personal opinion. And the reason is because I like information to be faster. With Ancestry.com, what that's going to do by contrast is it's going to say, okay, this person is likely to be who you're talking about, but then you've got to actually go find that record. One of the advantages, though, to the Ancestry.com is what you can see. So, like, if I wanted to pull up, and I have, I'm not going to show it because it's embarrassing, or maybe I will here in a second, an old yearbook photo of myself or of my cousin or of my son. A lot of times you'll find it. There are people that they go around to different areas and they upload information. So example be find a grave. So find a grave anywhere somebody goes and takes pictures in graveyards. That's literally what they do. And they upload it. All of that automatically goes over to Ancestry. So if you're wanting to build your story, Ancestry is probably, and you can correct me, Sandra, if you found this differently, Ancestry is probably your better one to go with.
It is the better paid site, but
Correct.
If you're interested and you don't want to invest the money, and I finally got my screen share to work, familysearch.org is the place to go. Now, it is not very user-friendly at all.
Yeah.
You really have to take time. Let me see if I can do this.
While you're trying to pull it up, Allegra, put yours on mute when you're not talking, and I think that might help us with the feedback. And I'll do the same. Do you think that it's because Ancestry has been around longer and there's more chances of finding more family? Also, I thought it was run by the Church of the Mormons versus 23andMe. So Yes, Ancestry has been around longer. As far as from a record component, I think that that is a possibility. That is, as far as the Church of the Mormons, I don't think it's always been. I will have to look that up. Um, what is your feeling about international ancestry info? I know subscription is more expensive. Is it worthwhile? So, I can tell you what we do is on our ancestry, it is about $50 US a month, but I split that between 7 different people. So, like, we have 7 different trees, and my nephew is a perfect example. He is looking at his mother's side, who I'm not related to at all. So it kind of helps pull that apart. I do think it just depends on what your goal is. So if your goal is just to find out what are my ancestors' name, I will tell you without doing it through ancestry.com, probably would have never known that my husband's grandfather had brothers because I found it in a newspaper article is what got me looking for it. Let's see. There's been some comments too about DNA and medications. Yep, that's definitely a thing. Let's see. And that there are no too many questions, Allegra. I appreciate it. Keep going.
I sent you the link. I can't get the present button to work for me
Okay.
to family search.
Hang on, I'll get over there. Let's see. Go back to looking at some of these other comments. I missed a couple. Let me go back up. International record. I've had luck using Facebook for a group specific to the country my ancestors came from. Hey, Cowpoke, yes. Facebook can also be a good location for that. And census records, by the way, are public information. So you can get this from somewhere else. The reason I like the service, and I sound like I'm selling services and I'm not, is just because unless you have a lot of spare time, like Sandra talked about, she's been able to get into it more because her daughter's graduated, right? Well, I have a job that requires a lot of hours. So for me to find the same information that Sandra does, because she's got a little more time, it's harder for me versus her.
Right.
Yeah, hey, Nurse Fee. It was in the beginning. Okay, so May the Face said former Mormon here. It was in the beginning. They had genealogy centers and it grew from there. Yep, I knew that they had done a lot of work in genealogy.
Right, and the FamilySearch.org is the Church of the Latter-day Saints, and they have a phenomenal site. You sign up for it. However, it is completely free. And you can get everything from census records to international records on their website. If you are interested and just starting out, that would be the place I would suggest you go. Simply because, it's cost effective for everybody. And quite honestly, for as long as I've been doing this, and I probably have, I don't know, 10 or 15 different websites I belong to, I rely on Family Search heavily because they also have a lot of probate records. And we'll probably get into that later, but as you go further back, it's harder and harder to identify ancestors. Probate records are a phenomenal way to do that. That and land records.
Well, and if your family has an old Bible, those tend to be really good ways of getting a hold of information. When I was doing the Bell Witch video, which I will link below, there was a problem where I couldn't quite tell you if John Bell's death certificate actually listed if he was his life was ended by a witch or not because there's no physical record. It doesn't mean it was never there, but it would not been a too unusual at that point for that just to have been recorded in a Bible and not actually submitted anywhere. Hang on, I'm having to set up an account with the Family Search, so give me just a second. We'll show that. So, Sandra, while I'm looking at that, what else would you say if someone was just starting out and they wanted to do it manually, where would you tell them to start?
The other big one are most all of the states have state archives on the internet. Google whatever state you're interested in, state archives, and there are a plethora of records on these state archives that are downloaded and free to use. Several are obviously better than others, but that would be another great way. You mentioned Find a Grave earlier. That's a really great website. The thing you have to be cautious about is some of the information that may be attached to a gravestone memorial may not be 100% accurate. It's based on the person who put it up. So you may have family members that are attached that aren't really family members. I've seen that more than once. And the other thing is newspaper articles are a great way to research. And again, you can join. I have 3 different memberships to 3 different archives. Newspaper archives is one of them. Genealogy Bank is another. But chronicling America on Library of Congress is 100% free, and they have a great amount of newspapers that are absolutely free. So it's called Chronicling America on Library of Congress. Also, the Google News Archives.
Okay, I will say if you're going to sign up for FamilySearch.org, I think they have the longest create an account that I've ever seen. I do want to say something else too about Ancestry.com. That's kind of a little bit of a another decision you have to make if you sign up for that. Are you going to share your family tree publicly or not? The advantage to publicly is somebody could find you that you don't know is there. The downside to publicly is somebody can find you don't know is there. You also really have to be careful about scams. So if you do have someone who comes up and you think that they're related to you, hey, I'm having a hard time, will you send me 50? But so just get prepared in your mind ahead of time for what you're going to say if you run across that. The other
And
thing
thankfully,
is,
I've never run into that issue. But again, my tree is on private, and they can send you a message to try to connect. So that's a great point.
Yeah. And a lot of times if you watch it in the movies, Sandra, if you'll mute yours while I'm talking, and then I'll mute mine back and forth. I think we'll be a little cleaner. If you watch movies and somebody's adopted and they go on a search, they're always either, they're royalty or everybody's nice and they hug each other, and that may not be the case. My son had some friends that are twins. They thought their family was not still alive. They actually were, but they had we're going to call it a very intensive criminal past. So when you really take a look at, when you get into this, realize you may come up with some surprises. Samantha T. High said, if someone else in your family has started one, will it automatically populate for you, your family tree, or do you have to build it yourself? So, Sandra, I'll let you answer that in just a second. From my experience, though, when you hit, there's these little leaves that come up and say, hey, your name's in somebody else's tree. And then you can go look at it to see if that's you. And if that's the case, then you can pull their tree into yours as long as they've given permission for that.
Yes, and that's correct through Ancestry.
And when you say state archives, are you referring to towns, clerk's offices? Yes. So yes, you can go back to property records. You can go birth and death records are public information. So you can go to that. Now, not all adoptions are going to be public. Some of them were done in private and were never registered with the state. Some of them, there's a lot of things that can go into that. We'll get into that in a different stream. All right, I'm about to share this screen. And let's just kind of see what we find out. Okay, and this is my first time on this site. So Sandra kind of taught me through this one. If I were going to want to search, I'm guessing I would go to records first.
Correct.
Okay.
That would be the good basic start.
Okay. And guys, we're doing this live, so I've never been on this site before, so I don't know what we're going to find. Okay. All right, let's see what comes up. Okay. So talk me through what we're looking at right now.
Let's see here. I'm trying to see the screen. I'm having a hard time reading that, but
That's okay. So what I'm seeing is a bunch of people that are not actually me in here. So it's probably like everything else when you just put in a last name of what you're going to find.
Exactly.
So let's see. Let me try something else. I'm going to try my maiden name and see what I can find here. Yep. Okay. So immediately it has found a record for me when I put in my maiden name, because it's going to show what my previous residence was when I lived there. And then I'm guessing I could attach that to a family tree if I wanted to. And then it's going to catalog the record like that. So really easy, as far as I can tell right now. And
right. And then when you're looking at an ancestor, the census records will actually pop up. And you can look at the actual census record itself. And again, this website's completely free.
Okay. And it can also look like images.
Let's
see. We're just going to play with this a minute. Again, guys, I just have this. I just signed up for this today, so we're kind of playing with it as we go.
Because she's dealing with a technology challenged live streamer here. First live stream.
You're fine. No. You're fine. Okay. So it does show you genealogy records from different years. So cool. So that's a place to go if you would want to do it complimentary without any cost. Allegra was saying Find a Grave has fooled me once. Yeah. It can.
And then the other fun thing about Family Search is if you go back to the search function and click on images, they have millions of images that are not indexed yet by name. So you can search by a location. Say your ancestors are from Newton County, Missouri. You type in Newton County, Missouri in the function, and it'll bring up probate records, school records, everything. You just have to go through and manually look through each page, unfortunately.
So this is a situation too on this one where, because it is records based versus DNA based, you're actually you could come up with information that's not correct. So my birth name is not the name that you just saw me type in. It's my adoptive name. So I'm going to take it. Let's see what happens if I put in a different name. I'm going to hide this for just a second and see. So if I actually put in my birth mother's information, which I just hid my screen because I don't want to dox her, I get a lot of different information. Let's see if it gets in closer. And she said she's got an account, so it'll find her. Yeah. So without showing it, it actually shows her information and when she lived in an area of Tennessee. So starting with something, I would say if you're starting from nothing, in Tennessee, the birth records are still sealed. So if you know you're adopted, you would want to start there to look at unsealing the record. I don't know what they do in other states. Here, they have a database that does a search. And if the person that you're trying to find agrees to be found, then they'll release the information. I don't know, Sandra, is that what you're finding in pretty much a lot of them?
Yes.
Okay, so that's pretty normal.
The easiest state, honestly, to do for adoptees is the state of California because, and again, this goes back to Ancestry.com. You can type in the person's name and it'll give the date of birth and everything, but then you, I'm trying to think of it, how to articulate it, but it'll show the birth record and the adoptee record. If you put in only the date of birth and the place of birth, you can narrow it down so you can get the mother's maiden name and the father's name.
Yeah. Okay. I started a couple comments. Allegra, I got yours on the Christmas gift. And Gina, new member. Thank you. Scott, yeah, Mormons are big on Ancestry. You're absolutely right. And I mentioned the Find a Gravefold. Okay, Calpick said that his, let's see. Terry K said, I tried working Ancestry, but hit a wall with my bio father's parents. Divorced when I was 11 and lost contact with his family. So if you were talking through Terry, where would you tell them to go next?
Do we know what state that they came from?
Let's see if
that would be number one.
And Anna, yes, I did have to sign up for an account with Terry. If you'll watch for his or her answer. Anna, did you have to sign in at Family Search First? Yes, I did. I signed on through Facebook, and you don't need a Church of Jesus Christ account. Where that is an option, unclick it because it automatically clicks. So when you go to sign in, unclick that box that says you're with the Mormon, because then it's going to ask you for a church ID number. So Terry, okay, if you want to send it to us offline? Sandra's been very generous in sharing her email address. I'll put in the comments below, the description below, but it's bluelinegenealogy@gmail.com. If you don't feel comfortable typing it, if you do and you want to put what state, we can probably give you some direction that way.
Right, and anybody, there are many of you in the chat that follow me on Twitter. I don't mind answering questions or pointing you in the right direction. Any help I can provide, I'm more than happy to.
This is, I'm about to show another site. Hang on, let me close out these other two. And yes, for those who are asking, I did create an account live on YouTube, so that way you can kind of see it. Let's see, any other questions? Yes, please hit the like button and all the lovely little YouTubey things. We are trying to grow. So I'm going to show you two. You can either go to the library and you can go through archives of newspapers yourself. Personally, I subscribe to something called newspapers.com. Again, not sponsored, not suggesting this, but if you're really interested in trying to dig into things, it can be something kind of fun to have.
Well, and I completely agree. That's where you get the family stories from. You know, it's not all about the dates. It's about what your family did throughout their life.
Yeah. So if you and I'll give you guys a little bit of a hint. I am working on a missing child case that I was actually there at the time that happened. So that video is coming out sometime this week. But if I want to look up, say, that child's name, and I know my date range, and I know the location. And I can spell because a lot of people are watching me type. I can actually pull up actual newspaper articles at the time. So when I'm researching something for, say, Scott or Rob's channel or Ian's channel or whatever I do, I pull up newspapers from that actual time frame. Now, there's a couple of things you have to remember about this. Number one is that all media is printed with bias. Okay. So that means that at the time, it's based on what the reporter puts on the page. And as you go and you start comparing newspaper articles from different locations, even different countries, you'll start seeing that they're the same. And that kind of lets you know that they didn't write the story, they got the story. When you look at some smaller ones, then that's where you get into a little bit of other things. So, just so you guys know, Lucy Meadows was a 4-year-old. She went missing allegedly in July 25th of 1996. But if I wanted to pull up information about her, I can from this website. I could go get the same information at it's called newspapers.com, Anna. I can get the same information from an archive at the library. It's just a whole lot faster.
Agreed. That's one of my favorite websites.
Yeah. And again, as you get further and further, it gets more complicated. My experience is once I get past about 1600 is where things get really dicey. The other thing is, no matter what country you end up tracing back to, even if it's written in English, the English is not the same as what we speak now. So it's almost like you're trying to translate something. So when you read it, you really have to read it. Suspend everything you think you know and read what they're saying on the page, and remember the time frame. Because the oldest photo I could find in our family of my husband's was back 7 generations, and it was a house. So the further back you go, the less likely you are, especially if your family was not affluent, to find photographs. Your census records, your military records, those are going to be pretty much for everybody. But when you talk about getting, again, 1700s, 1600s, you'll find some as far as paintings and physical descriptions, but sometimes you may not even know what you're reading. Newspapers.com, Anna. Yep. And I'll put that link in there too. Not that Karen, great chat. Thank you. Yeah, I think we just, like I said, we got some questions and wanted to kind of share what we knew. And she and I have been talking about a little bit as well. Let's see. Lori loves Montana. My son has, it either says so interest or no interest. I'm thinking by the way she said that is has no interest in finding his birth mother. I will help him if he ever wants to start searching. And you know what? That's absolutely okay if your son has no interest in it. Family is not just who you're related to, it's who you choose. So like I have a adoptive cousin that I call my sister. We grew up together and it doesn't matter what it is, we're going to be there for each other and we're family. And then I have other family members who, it's funny, we had our Thanksgiving yesterday. My father comes in and there's certain people he'll speak to, there's certain people he won't. He's 88 years old and he is not going to change that. So, relationships are complicated, whether they're genetic or not. So again, this is just something to know from a research of that whole question about, where do you come from, so to speak.
Right. And my tree, I actually include the aunts and uncles that married into our family. My daughter, who is actually my bonus daughter, I've researched her biological mother's and family tree, and it's also in my computer because we're comprised of everybody. It's not just the genetics and the biology, it's the entire family.
Yeah. Absolutely. And KP, hang on, I'm trying to kill that echo. Thank you for KP Super Chat 999. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and expertise. I'll be rewatching this video after tonight. Yeah, sorry we had a little bit of a rough start. We had some technical problems right when we first began that we seem to have been able to smooth out a little bit now. But I appreciate you taking the time. Let's see. Website, newspapers.com. Let's see. That one. Okay, there she is. Hey, I figured out how to do that, Scott. You should be impressed. I hit the right button. At Tish in Tennessee, I do know her name and where she was born, lived. If we needed to find her, we could. Yeah. And like I said, I mean, I can see it from both sides. So, I was a single mom at one point, with we're going to call it limited family support. I had some, and depending on the situation, I make no judgment for someone who has to give a child up for adoption at all. Sometimes there's no choice, and that's a good thing. It's not something I chose to do. But I can totally see someone deciding that they want to find their ancestors, who their biological parents, or the reverse, a biological parent wanting to find a child. But I think it's okay. I mean, it's more than okay for either one to decide that's not what they want to do. It's perfectly fine. Anna Rorwitz, families are complicated. I think that is the understatement of the day and the overstatement, right? Because yes, they're absolutely complicated. Anyone May the Fed? Okay. Adrian Angevine, sorry if I said that wrong. I'm hitting a wall with the mid 1800s in Ireland. I've only been using Ancestry. Do you have any tips or sites to help there? Sandra, what would you say?
I do. It's called irishgenealogy.ie, I believe. I'm double checking myself.
Okay.
I'll send you the link, Tish.
Okay.
I recently started doing, I have some Irish ancestors, and Ireland is one of those difficult countries to do your genealogy with because of the amount of records that have been destroyed through various conflicts.
Yeah.
This website.
Again, to remember that once you get past, Sandra, you may want to mute yours just a second. Again, I'm sorry, I can't clean it up for some reason. The other thing is once you get past 1700, again, I want to stress the accuracy of the information can be questionable. And the reason that the accuracy of that information can be questionable is because, like she said, different people come in and they destroy something and people rebuild it to the best of their memories. But human memory is sometimes not the most accurate thing in the world. Hang on, I'm going to show the Irish industry one. And Sandra, you can tell us what we're looking at here in a second. Okay. So what you see on your screen now is the Irish version. It looks like it looks very similar to the other one, to the family search.
It is, and I just recently got an account for this, so I'm still a bit of a newbie, if you will, researching and going through, but it's really easy to navigate. You literally just have to go across the, site for church records, civil records, useful links, etc. And I have found a couple of things in the church records that I did not find on Ancestry.com.
Well, and two, you may not want to start with you. So, like, if you know a grandparent, a great grandparent's name, you might want to put their name in instead of yours, and then kind of work backwards. So, put in their name, connect them to you to make sure they're who you're looking for, and then go backwards from there. Because, again, you guys, my name is Tish, but my full name is something else. Tish is a nickname. So you can also try putting in nicknames that that people went by, because you may or may not. What you call somebody, like in our family, it's a little bit insane. We call cousins aunts and aunts cousins, and there's no telling how we're related to each other at the end of the day. If you listen to some of our relatives, let me see. I'm going to unstar some of these that I looked at already.
But yes, especially when you're working on international genealogy, for example, on this Irish genealogy, if you're researching the surname O'Sullivan, try O'Sullivan and also try Sullivan.
Yeah.
It just depends. It's always best to play with that.
And also, if you can find, and you can on a lot of sites. So, like, if you can find the spelling of your name in another language, that can help too. So, like, if you're on the German site, look at the way your name would have been spelled in German, and you can that can help too to be able to narrow it down a little bit. May the Fae said, anyone watch the show? Who do you think you are? It's a celebrity research show. Yes, I've seen that. Yep.
It's a great show.
It's a really good show because what you realize is, in a lot of ways, our birth lottery matters on where we end up. And the
Mhm.
decision that people made before us have a lot to do with where we ended up now. I love it when people want to say, well, so and so was born in difficult circumstances and they brought themselves up. Okay, great. But they're usually the minority, right? So we owe a lot of good and bad, right, to our histories. Um, Allegra
Well,
says sometimes by adoption, complicated families end up with 11 legal grandparents. Thus, the gratitude to you both for, I lost her. Thus, the gratitude for you both for offering to help out. Yep. Um, yeah, the KP was saying she's seen clips of it on YouTube, and it is a really good show. Adrian and Javine, yes, the record loss is sad. You know, one of the things, and Scott, if he was on, he could probably tell more about this than I could, but the Mayans in particular kept really meticulous records until there was a civil upheaval, and a lot of what they had was absolutely destroyed because it was taken the revolution was taken over by people who didn't know how to read or write. So they didn't know the value of anything that was in there. So of course they just destroyed it as they went. Terry, okay, thank you so much for your introduction. Yeah, on Twitter I am Tish in Tennessee One. I'm sorry, yeah, Tish in Tennessee One. Feel free to reach out to me on Twitter if you would like. That way, you know, if you have questions you don't want to put in the chat, and I certainly wanted to honor that, you can. Sandra, do you want to say who you are on Twitter?
yeah, it's under Sandra Ramirez. It was one of those at R something. It auto generated for me, and you can also reach me at bluelinegenealogy@gmail.com.
Yep.
And I'm more than happy to help anybody with any questions you might have.
And my email is on my YouTube channel. It's Tish at tishintennessee.com. And again, I will be more than happy to help what I can. I'm not the expert that Sandra is. I'm just what I call a very novice at it over the last few years. But one of the things that you'll hear me say several times is I'm an eternal student, meaning I want to know everything. And I'll wait a long time before I have my opinion on anything. And that's kind of what kind of opened up this discussion. So, Tish, for those of us on Twitter, how do we connect with you? Tish at tishintennessee.com is another way to reach me. If you have Instagram, I'm Tish in Tennessee One there. I'm on TikTok, although I will be honest, I do very little on it, and probably that won't change anytime soon. But I'm on there as well. So my other media platforms, it's Tish in Tennessee One. So you'll find me there.
And if Allegria can, she can tag my Twitter account. She follows me on Twitter.
Yep.
And anybody can reach me there as well.
Adrian said, I'm looking for the McGurn family, and they keep using the same names like Patrick, Peter, Mary, every generation, same names, and it's confusing. Yes. And Sandra and I were talking about this actually backstage. So in my family in the South, in the United States and Tennessee, Letitia is not a very common name at all. But if you look back in my adopted family's genealogy, that name comes up a bunch. And actually, my name is easier to spell and say than a lot of the people in our family. So you would think that that would not be a name that would come up a lot, but they do. You know, and men's names tend to be the easier ones, like you know, Jim, James, John. But it's really interesting how even names that people think they made up actually show up later in their background. It's almost like we have a collective memory with someone that we don't quite realize that we have.
Well,
Okay.
and in a lot of cultures, the German culture, for example, the name repetition was done on purpose to honor the previous generation.
Yes.
And that can get really tricky.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's see. I want to make sure. Donna Tripp, hey, sorry I missed this. We'll replay when I can. Just busy here. Donna, I understand. I appreciate you taking the time to make a comment at all. So I appreciate you. I'm looking to make sure if I missed a question or comment, I'm so sorry. This is my second time doing this. Like I said last week, I've been on a bunch of streams, but running it from this end can be a little bit, it takes a little bit of getting used to, just to be honest with you. I don't see another question.
One
Yeah.
other tip I thought
Yep.
of is if you don't want to invest in a subscription, check your local libraries, people.
Yep.
Most of them do have an Ancestry.com account. Several
Yeah.
different, the
Yeah.
Family Search, they are a completely unused, untapped resource. And a lot of times, if I don't want to invest in something, a specific website, I will check it out at the library.
Well, and again, I've got some discount codes. Sandra, I'm sorry, yours is back. Is feeding back a little bit again. I've got some discount codes again. They are not sponsored videos, just in case somebody does want to look into it. It gives you a little bit of percentage off, and that will be in the description as well. Okay, I'm looking to make sure I did not miss any other questions. I'm trying to keep these at about an hour, hour and a half, because I know everybody's busy, and it's a good way to start off the week. But again, we had so many questions in so many chats that I really couldn't answer in in the chats that I wanted to kind of go over this a little bit. Um, the other thing that I will say about, hey, I want to do research and you're wanting to do research for a channel, you really have to be careful that you have credible information because there's so much garbage out there on the internet. It's insane. You know, Wikipedia is a decent place to start, but it's not where you ever want to finish when you're looking up something. Just like the online records are good places to start, but not when you want to finish. Because you have to remember too that you have some interesting situations. You have a brother that got drafted, and the other younger or older brother went in their place, so they became that person. So that stuff happens more than you realize, and when you really get into it, you'll kind of see it. The other thing is, I would be very, very respectful of other people when you do this. Um, that's why I didn't log in completely to my Ancestry account, because I didn't want to show pictures of other people without their consent, even though I'm sure that those would be fine. You want to make sure that you're respectful for everybody. But the other thing that I almost forgot to mention on Ancestry.com, it has the ability for members to upload letters. So whereas with 23andMe, you're dependent on the information that they give you. Ancestry, you can give information back. But again, please take all of that with a grain of salt. All right. Sandra, I am going to thank you so much for taking your Sunday to come on. It means the world to me.
I really enjoyed it. This is my passion. I love talking about it. I could
Yeah.
talk about it for a couple more hours. So anytime you'd like to have me back, I'm more than happy to oblige.
Well, and if you guys want to send some questions, we'll look at having Sandra back on. KP, thanks very much. Thank you for the super chat. Um, Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and expertise. I'll be rewatching this video after tonight. Awesome. And as you guys rewatch it, if you have questions and you want to send it to either of us, or if we get a bunch of questions, if you want to shoot me over, I'm about to start an email list that I can push information out instead of just you guys sending it to me. We'll put together an FAQ between the two of us. And I will put that on my Twitter page. If you don't have Twitter, Tish at tishandtennessee.com, if you want to join that mailing list, and we'll kind of pull our brains together on the questions that are asked. All right, guys, until next week, just remember, like I said, I am putting out content. I'm trying every Thursday at minimum, putting out some other shorts, but I'm making some pivot to some more true crime stuff. I do have a poll up. If you think about it and you can take the time to vote, I want to know what you want to see. Until then, we'll talk next week. Good afternoon, good night, good morning, wherever you are in the world. I appreciate your time. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, Tish.
Absolutely, anytime.